it's early 80s. It's called a Custom 88 made by Baldwin. It was kind of their answer to the Rhodes as far as I understand it. It is fully solid state discrete keyboard. It's got a 12-note oscillator and then a touch sensitive trigger circuit for each key of the keyboard. And what I've done is put this patch bay on the top here where I can patch a note, or a key as I call it, to any note. So I can make this G play that C sharp or whatever, and I've got it set up right now to a patch. Obviously it's a patch. These are the notes that I have to work with. So those are the notes that I play. Yeah, and I've kind of been developing this instrument and the music from it based on this. This kind of dictates what the music feels like and what the music does. And this is the second most recent version of what I'm doing with it. Also in here, so I've done this, I've added this bit of circuitry which allows me to patch the keys to the notes, but as well as that I've added on one of the felt bumpers in the back, I've added contacts, so when I hit a key I've got two 8-pin cables in the back that create contact and allow me to trigger, like just on-off trigger, so I can control the lights and stuff like that. They just have like a common and then pins around it. That's getting the triggers from my keys. And previously what I've been doing, I've been running like incandescent lights and driving that relay board and triggering relays. But for this setup I realized that I don't actually have to do that. I can run the low voltage of the LEDs just right through the trigger circuit, which means the relays don't click, which is really nice. This is a power supply. It's a computer power supply. It's 500 watts. Really good. It puts out 3.3 volts, 12 volts, and a bunch of different voltages. 3.3 is perfect for the LEDs that I'm using. And then this is the LEDs. So these come in and then they wire off to each one of these banana plugs. So I've got the neutral, common, and then each individual light. And I can just unplug them and plug them in depending on what note I want to play what light. I never fully assembled it. I never put the final screws in it, but yeah, that's what that does. And then these run over this, it's a positive and negative for each LED. That's in these things I made out of foam core. They're just like, you can see the LEDs here. It's like on the back of that, this little heat sink thing. The wires come into it, and then there's gel on the inside for the colors. They're just plain old white LEDs. And then the camera's projecting at that, and you can see it's just feeding back on itself. Over there, so you see that big bright light over there? That's the projector. Yeah.
All right.
And that's what it is.
How did you decide which notes to assign to each note?
It was just a slowly additive process.
Yeah.
I think I started kind of like in there, and that I've got kind of like 1, and then kind of 2, or 6, and I just kind of like kept building on it, and then it gets, the black keys are farther out, so that's kind of clear, and then.
Oh, I see.
So I get kind of, the more black notes I play, the farther away it gets from tonal, like 1 tonal center.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like melodies that kind of happen that were, that's the kind of part where it's fun, is like I kind of slowly build this, and then once this is put together, the things that happen musically are dictated by that, and kind of I like find out like the melodies that exist within it, like this, that, those two notes. There's like in the way that I play it, there's like a point when they kind of like start happening repeatedly, and it, like you know, that kind of stuff. There's just different like melodic or harmonic things that happen. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other like main aspect of this is the delay. So I've got the keyboard set up, and I run it through two delays over here, just like old delays, effectrons, and they're timed. So they play in time, and what I can do is, depending on the tempo that I'm playing, I can line it up so there's 4 notes that line up, like. Sound like tempo phasing by just playing, like slowly shifting tempo. The notes kind of sound like they start to get longer. There's kind of like overtone ringing that happens within it. You know, if you're playing, you think those notes are the same, you know, and if they're perfectly lined up and perfectly in phase, they just sound one thing. But if they shift a little bit, they ring out different overtones based on their phase relationship. So by playing at, you know, the different tempos within the delay, then I can kind of, it becomes like I don't know if a ring modulator is the right word. I don't even really know what that is, but it like, you can kind of get like overtone singing sounds. It'll kind of hear like an overtone sliding up and down, and stuff like that.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's really fun. It serves a specific purpose in my life right now, you know.
keyboard is a reflection. You know, if your two hands are just reflected like that, and that is what is attractive about a keyboard to me.
That's so interesting.
Like that
'Cause
aspect of it.
It's interesting that you said it that you alter it to be a reflection, because
Yeah.
since it is like linear, you know.
Right.
When I think of it, I always think of it as like the patterns, how I know how to move around, you know? Like from playing classical music, it's like there's certain kind of like structures with your hands that you do over and over again.
Right.
And
I never learned that. I like took piano lessons.
That's really interesting because like in classical music, so much of it is trying to make each of your fingers really independent and like not like a mirror, you know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I remember I like learned a scrabbing piece once, and I never got it right, but there was a lot of work put into like following where the melody went through the hands and trying to like bring it out, and I could, you know, I know that the concept is there. I can't do it.
Yeah. No, but that's really cool to like to split it into a mirror, because I've never thought of the keyboard that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a specific note reflection. If you put G sharp right between your thumbs, then you've got white and black keys in the same shape.
Oh.
All the way out. So you've got a perfect mirror. If you got C on this pinky and E on this pinky, and you assign a white key to each finger, you've got like a perfect mirror.
Okay.
And yeah. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. Is there a spiritual aspect to the work?
I mean, there's a spiritual aspect to everything.
Yeah. Because it does seem to have that effect on people, like when, like a kind of trance or...
Yeah. I mean, this music, the keyboard stuff that I've been doing for the past couple of years is that for me. It's like, it becomes a spiritual thing because it's just a goal that I don't know how to do, and then I learn how to do it, then I can do it, and I just do it, and like trance on it, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's, yeah.
What does that feel like when you're playing?
I mean, for me, it's a meditation, because it's a chance for me to allow, you know, my conscious mind to focus on, you know, more recently, like holding a finger pattern and listening to the sound. Like my conscious mind is able to focus on that, and the way that I have the delay set up, it takes a certain amount of effort to keep it going. You know what I mean? Like that. There's a little bit of just enough effort, and it's a repeating effort. So, like thoughts or whatever, like come out, like in that focus, like that, the back of my mind kind of like comes out. That's the kind of thing. Yeah.
How do you have the delay set up with
It's
it?
just as like that. It's just quarter note at 120 or something like that.
Yeah. So you have to keep all the notes going, otherwise it'll get off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I don't have to, but that's part that's part of the fun of it, is like moving within that like window. You have like a window of tempo that you can fit within if you're trying to line up 6 notes. You know what I mean? And if you're trying to line up 4 notes, the window's a little bit slower, you know, or something like that. So there's that aspect of it, and that like there's real small changes that I can do within that. Like if I'm playing 6 notes at, you know, say 120 BPM, 16th notes, and going like that, and I go down to 119.9 BPM, it just kind of stretches everything out a little bit, you know. So it's a good way to make me really conscious of tempo shift and of that sort of thing.
Yeah, do you think that it changes your perception of time while you're playing?
I'm sure it does, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. To be so focused into the very small details.
The cool thing about it is that it changes my perception of space.
How?
That's the awesome thing. So there's a sonic phenomenon called first reflections.
What's that?
It's when you snap or there's a sound in a room, it's from the sound source to a boundary back to your ear. And what that does, it informs your mind how big a space is. So if you have much quicker early reflection, you feel the space is smaller. If you have no early reflection, it's no space. If you have a big, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Rather than like reverb trail, like the sound of the sound dying off, that informs you of like what the space is made of. If the walls are soft, if the walls are hard, like tells you that. So as I'm playing, to the delay, like if I can, so I've got the delay feeding back on itself, and like these are the delay reflections. If they all kind of like fall right in line, then the sound is perfectly centered and it sounds like there is no space around it. But if they fall just a little bit out of line, there's like a space pops around it and it sounds like a really small room. So I can kind of shift the size of like the space. And I can hear it. I can kind of try to control it, but I can't really because it's such a small, milliseconds of change. That's one of my favorite things about it. And so in that like stacked shift also like brings different harmonics because the frequencies are interacting and it brings overtones and undertones and that sort of a thing. And it's one of those things like I'm set up like with a mixer and 2 studio monitors like bounce at my ears and I'm like in the sweet spot listening to it. So it's really every time I play a show like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get them in that little bitty room, or
People in the audience.
And I can never I can't hear it, so there's little chance that anybody else would be able to hear it. But
maybe like a headphone show or something. Would something have that same effect through headphones, or does it have to be?
Oh yeah. Not as like. Because it's like a psychoacoustic phenomenon, so just even the effect of having your head, like knowing you're wearing headphones, is going to change your perception of the effect.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I wonder, just hearing you talk about that, it makes me wonder if that would have anything to do with people's sort of like physical heart feeling. Being in a space.
What do you mean heart feeling? Like palpitations or?
No, like when I'm improvising, when I listen back to what I've played, I notice that what makes the biggest difference in if something sounds good to me or sounds flat and dead is just really, really small amounts of space. Mm-hmm. If I play a note just like a little bit too soon or a little bit too late, it sounds dead. But there's times where when that space is right, it sounds like it has a kind of air around it.
You're talking about the space between notes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it'll sound like there's a kind of air around things, and that like a melody will be floating in space instead of being like, I'm strangling it.
Sure. I wonder like.
And it just makes me wonder because I always think of that as like, kind of like a heart space, which is my own kind of fruity explanation for it, But it does make me wonder if that effect has any effect on people's kind of.
I mean, I personally have
on their souls.
Yes, I think sound in all forms has an impact on your soul. Obviously, it has an impact on yours. Like that's the beauty, like that. The space between notes, obviously, I like the space between notes to be very regular and very small and precise. Like that's the kind of space that is my heart space. That's I have a metronome-shaped hole in my heart. But I think that's very valid, and I think that aspect of music is often overlooked. Like that kind of like because in music, meter is so prevalent and so important, and playing in time and like that stuff, and that's interpretation of meter is what kind of I think what sets people apart. Like their feel is really what makes me like a musician.
I agree with that too.
Yeah. And I think that falls exactly into what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think for me anyways, it's one of the hardest parts because you're dealing with something so small.
Yeah, exactly.
That is like there and gone, there and gone, there and gone, over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing because it breaks down. It takes a feeling and puts it into a rigid structure of time and placing it within time. And I think that speaks to one of the broader goals of music is to like vocalize and create physical vibration based on like a feeling.
When you did the piece that I saw a while ago at Holy Underground, when you did that, you played for a long time and then came in singing. Is it like you're getting into the mindset and then you sing?
That one, there was like a specific process that I went through, and then I landed on a thing.
Yeah.
And that thing I can just do forever.
Yeah.
There was like, and then that's when I sing. And that thing, so it was like, that one started with 2 notes, and then I went, and I like counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, and then switched them so they're going be-doody like that, and then counted 13, and then switched them and like did like a reduction thing, and then went through like another small thing, and then landed on a 3-note repeating pattern, and that's when I sang like intro, verse, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's I've always like that's something I've been trying to figure out with the keyboard stuff. Is it always feels like the vocals are kind of just like.
Yeah.
Just like really, really come in the way. But
I think it's interesting because you don't see a lot of people doing that. Like, people will either make like guitar singing music, or they'll make experimental music, and there's not really a lot of overlap. I think it's interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to hear you say that.
Yeah. When you're working on building something, like, what's the kind of like judgment process as you're thinking about things? Is it just like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, how much is intuitive and how much is kind of like responding to the materials themselves?
That's really what it is. It's like I have an idea. It's like it's responding like specifically to the keyboard. Like that's like what I've been doing. It's like been going keyboard to keyboard. Like I had got that reed organ, and then I like wrote on that and dreamed about that piece, and then I found. I got a gem organ. It's like a combo organ, and I learned to play like. Then I could play that piece in just intonation because I could tune the notes. So that like was kind of the next step, and then I got a farfisa and fixed that, and I was able to play 2 octaves that sounded the same. So I wrote a piece that was like based on like those octaves in the way that they sound the same, like the notes mixing together.
Like it was the same notes in each hand?
Yeah, same octave, same sound in 2 hands. And the way and it's cool because if you play 2 notes together, like the same note together, like G sharp and G sharp, it's quieter than if you play different notes. Which was really cool. So like I learned how to play a 13-note phrase, shifting like my right hand 1 note at a time, so it lined up all the way through, and like made a piece on that. And then that happened. And I did that for a while, and then I got that piano that I could, like a junky piano, and learned how to kind of like alternately tune it, and realized that I like to be able to play, same notes in multiple places. And then I found that piano in the Copycat, and my keyboard,
Yeah.
And like opened it up, was like, what? Like I saw it in an empty apartment and looked at it and went, and like picked it up. It was really heavy and went, fuck no, and left it there for like months, and then went back and pulled it out and just opened it up and realized that, like, looked at the circuits and realized that that option to make one key play this note was easily accessible within that keyboard.
Yeah.
And then that just created this.
Yeah.